Hey guys, Dylan here, and today we are going to be doing another Sonic discussion. I haven't forgotten about my Ian Flynn discussion that will be continuing soon, but for right now I want to talk about a different thing that Ian Flynn is working on, and he's actually still working on this. But let's talk about the Metal Virus arc. What I ended up doing was I went on Twitter, just like last time, and I let my thoughts out there to the world. This time we decided to rewrite the entire Metal Virus arc. So I'm going to read this thread, and hopefully you guys will have a good time listening to what I thought the Metal Virus arc could have been. Okay, here we go. It's Sonic discussion time again. A very cringy opening past me. Today I will be rewriting the Metal Virus arc from the IDW Sonic comics. Now, here are the rules for the discussion. 1. I can't add any new items or characters to the plot. And 2. I have to wrap up everything by the end. I set these rules in place because I want to have the same limitations Ian Flynn had for his original story, and want to point out how it could have been done better. The one exception I will make is the cliffhanger at the ending. I added that because it fit in with the story and would hint at a future arc if I were to get one, which I won't because I'm not actually working for them. First, let's start with a recap. Eggman has lost his memory and became the kind Mr. Tinker, who genuinely doesn't want to be evil. The last time we saw him, he was taken by Starline's men. Metal Sonic was recovered by Tails and chose to reject Sonic's offer of friendship and left. And here's where we get our first deviations from the plot. In this story, Metal Sonic doesn't return back to the base where Mr. Tinker just so happens to be. Instead, Metal gives up on finding Eggman and finally accepts that he is dead. Realizing that Eggman is dead, his search mode switches into the contingency plan Operation Metal Death. He then melts into a puddle of liquid metal and slowly starts to spread across all organic material it comes in contact with, like the trees and the hills and everything. I chose to do it this way because it would make the virus seem less random, and I do think that the virus was really random. Eggman remembers who he is in the IDW comics, and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I came up with this virus. I got it in some vats already. Let's test this shit. I thought that was random. This way it seems more organic. And hint at a clear way for the heroes to stop it in the future. That being, if you stop Metal Sonic, you stop the virus. Doing it this way would also slow the growth of the virus and make the spread of it seem more real and scary. And we see that idea that they kind of hinted at in the actual story, but mostly it was just Eggman pouring goo on shit. It wasn't even like that, but whatever. This also changes the stakes of the story. Eggman doesn't seem like he's upping the scale of his evil for no reason. This is his final fuck you to Sonic in case of his death. This way it will remind Sonic why killing Eggman won't work and help us go back to status quo later. Now I bring this up because in the IDW comics in the prior arc, Shadow wanted to kill Eggman, and Sonic wanted Eggman to live. This way we can test if Shadow's theory is true. If Sonic did ever listen to him and just decide to kill Eggman, this is what would happen, and there'd be no way for Shadow to stop it. This way I can prove Shadow wrong without having to embarrass him. This seems like a good point to tell you guys that I don't like killing off characters unless I have to. I don't want to hurt the tone of the book going into the future. So in my version of events, the only time someone will get infected is if I feel I can build upon it later, which is a problem I have with Ian Flynn. I was talking about it in my last Ian Flynn rant. I'll talk about it more. Ian Flynn likes killing off random characters for no reason, and in this story, because everyone can turn back to normal eventually, he's just been killing them off left and right. We got Rough and Tumble, we got Charmy, we got Cream's mom, we got Tangle. It was just getting crazy. So many people just dying. I bring that up because Sonic doesn't get infected by Rough and Tumble here. Instead, he gets infected when he goes to check on reports of citizens attacking each other in another village. Sonic doesn't know what this is and ends up hitting one of them and gets infected. Now, I thought that this would be better because it makes it seem like it's less Eggman's fault. Like, this time Sonic just underestimated his foe and there was no way he could have known that they were infected. Instead of Eggman purposely sending sending 2 people to their death just to try to infect Sonic. And it gives Sonic like a way to go out as a hero because he got infected by trying to save the day. It's a very Sonic thing. Much like in the original story, Sonic can run off the spread of the infection, and Tails still does tests to find a cure. The difference is that when the infection spreads in this story, Metal Sonic tries to gain control of Sonic's brain. We see that later, the more people that get infected, the faster the infection starts to spread from village to village, like it would in real life. Creeping ever so close to reaching the cities, this moves the blame of the spread from Eggman dumping goo on everyone to every civilian who happened to pass it on. And I think that that's important because I think just making Eggman the big bad guy is really boring and cliche. Instead, having the blame be on cities not being prepared for some type of outbreak like this and for it to be put onto the citizens themselves, that seems a little bit more interesting to build on in the future. Sonic and Amy decide to go to an old underground base that Eggman had abandoned and use his computer to find out what's going on. They eventually find the Metal Death files. They just find out that there is the Metal virus and that it was made by Eggman. The virus reaches the cities, but to build up hope from all the death and destruction, we get to see the heroes gather people to be escorted to a safer location. They know not to touch the Zombots, so they don't, and no main characters get infected in this event. And that's one thing that I feel like is a big problem with Ian Flint's story, is that it seems like doom and gloom all the time. There's not really any hopeful moments. It's just failure after failure after failure, and all their friends just keep dying slowly. That's not really good for this kid's book. I think that kills the mood. It makes everyone really depressed, so I'm gonna avoid that in my version of it. We then follow Team Dark at the center of the city that was just evacuated. Shadow, Rouge, and Omega were sent there to hold off the Zombots for as long as possible, while the civilians escape. They are now in the final fight, and the Zombots have them surrounded. Now, I feel like that making their event connected to the escort kind of raises the stakes, because it shows that Team Dark is to thank for all those people getting away. If Team Dark wouldn't have stayed in the middle of the city and fought off these Zombots, those people might have not even made it out of the city. And this is the big fight of the comic. And to have Team Dark going out fighting is a good way to go. But instead, in the actual comic, this is just kind of some city that they're in, and it doesn't really do much. I will keep Shadow in character and remove any mention of blaming Sonic for his own infection. Instead, the fight they have is over Eggman. Shadow thinks that he was right and that Mr. Tinker is to blame for all this. Sonic tries to change his mind, but is told to shut up. Shadow is still told about running off the infection, but it doesn't matter, because the way he gets infected has changed. All their men are infected by the Zombots, and the Zombots are closing in. One of them jumps at Rouge, and Shadow saves her by pushing her out of the way, and he gets infected in the process. Now infected and surrounded by Zombots and realizing that there's no way to escape, Shadow and Omega accept their fate and decide to go out fighting one last fight and tell Rouge to fly away and tell the others that they fell. This way, they get to go out like heroes, and I think that this is the best way to take Shadow out. Just like in SA2, just like in Shadow the Hedgehog, Shadow is the type of man who would sacrifice himself to save others, even if it's just one person. Shadow is a heroic person. Yes, he has an attitude, but I don't believe that he would be so selfish like he is in the comic, and I don't believe that he is dumb enough to jump into the horde of Zombots unless he absolutely had to. Pushing Rouge out of the way and then getting dragged into the horde is a much better way for Shadow to get infected and become fully a Zombot, because if you get grabbed by the horde, there's no way to get out. So saving Rouge, then getting infected, much better than just getting infected because he's a big dummy. Shadow still gets infected and fight Sonic, but Omega was torn apart by the horde in this story instead of by one of his only friends, which is fucked up, Ian Flynn. That's really fucked up having Shadow kill Omega. Tails swoops in and saves his head. We then cut to after the evacuation of the city, where Tangle tells Whisper that her friend Jewel was infected and that she had to leave her behind. Whisper will be able to relate with Tangle because now they have both lost people who are close to them. And I feel like that this is important to build on Tangle and Whisper. I hate how they handle Tangle and Whisper in the actual story itself. Killing off Tangle to make Whisper suffer more sets Whisper back as a character because she had just welcomed someone else into her life and then she loses someone again. So that's just torturing Whisper, and I feel like we didn't have to have that. Tails' research shows that the virus is not only made of the same stuff as Neo Metal Sonic, but in actuality it's Neo himself. The Zombots all share a hive mind, and they are constantly sending out the signal that Eggman is dead and that all life must die with him. And this is a spot where they would learn, finally, the characters, not the audience, that the infection is caused by the death of Eggman, and that the only way to save everyone is to get Eggman. This is a good point to introduce that, and I think Tails would be the one to figure that out. The virus could be speaking in binary or something, and he could decode it. Tails realizes that the only way to stop Metal is to bring back Eggman. Now, we haven't seen Mr. Tinker since he was taken by Rough and Tumble at the end of the last arc, so when Tails realizes they need him, he calls up Sonic and tells him to meet him at his lab ASAP. Sonic gets to the lab and asks where would they even start to look for Mr. Tinker. He could be anywhere after all this Zombot stuff. Tails then tells Sonic that he never believed that Eggman had turned good, so he put a tracker on him, and they run off to find him. Now, I do find it kind of fucked up that Tails would be tracking someone, but this man is a known liar and a known supervillain, so I can see Tails actually deciding to bug him just in case he actually is evil still. So I don't think that's too out of character. Sonic and Tails eventually find the base that Starline is hiding in and breaks into it to talk to Tinker. They see a mad Starline, and Starline informs them that he has already tried hypnotic therapy on Tinker and he won't break. Starline can only turn him back to Eggman if he wants to. So Eggman's own determination is preventing him from going back to normal. Sonic then tells Tinker what happened to Windmill Village and that everyone there had been infected and Eggman is the only one who can save all of his friends. Tinker remembers all the good times he had in the village and decides to cooperate with Starline to save them. Now, I think that this flips it. This flips what Ian Flynn did. Ian Flynn made Eggman get his memory back and then decided to torture them for being nice to him. In my version of the story, it's their niceness that makes Mr. Tinker give himself up to become Eggman again. And this way, you can always wonder if Eggman does have some feelings for them deep down inside and just won't express it. I think that's more interesting than him just going around killing the friends of Mr. Tinker. The hypnosis works and Tinker snaps back into being Eggman. Starline brags that it was only thanks to him that he is back. Tails tells him that the metal death virus has been activated and Eggman agrees to help. But Sonic thinks to himself that he is to blame for Eggman coming back. And this would be a good thing to move on with the future, that the next time that Eggman does something, Sonic will remember that it's only thanks to him that Eggman is back. That he could have still been Tinker. It doesn't matter what scenario it is. It doesn't matter that Sonic had to do it. He will still blame himself for bringing back Eggman. Eggman flies to Windmill Village and commands Metal to call off the attack and reform this instant because he is still alive and will need his help for his next plan. The goo starts to fade away, Metal reforms, and then Eggman walks away and everything goes back to normal. Now, I chose Windmill Village specifically because I want you to question to yourself if Eggman still has some Tinker inside of him. If he went to this village and saved this village first, just because of the people that Mr. Tinker cared about. Is this one last act of Mr. Tinker, or was this just random? It's just something for the readers to question themselves, and I think that'd be an interesting idea. The day is saved by Eggman of all people, but Starline later reveals that he has all 7 Chaos Emeralds and can't wait for him and the Doctor to use them against Sonic and friends. So everything is all wrapped up. We built up some intrigue for the next arc. And that was my version of the Metal Virus arc. Now, I know that it was pretty short and that if it was like an actual proper like multi-issue comic, there would have to be more stuff added to it. But I really feel like the way events play out here is more satisfying than the way that Ian Flynn had the events play out. I really don't like how many characters he needlessly killed off. I don't like the random subplots of Tails having to look for a cure, then the cure device that he's trying to work on gets destroyed, then he makes makes another one, then it gets destroyed again. I don't like all the pointless filler that was in the story, and I feel like making it center around Mr. Tinker and Eggman is more satisfying than just having Eggman flip right back to being evil again and up his evil for literally no reason. Now, some complaints you could have is that Starline wasn't really focused on, but I feel like Starline doesn't have to be focused on. This would be a good arc to establish some of the powers that Starline has, and then Starline can be the winner at the end by turning Eggman back into Eggman, and then that can build up for the next arc. I feel like that this should have focused more on the heroes being heroes instead of the heroes just constantly losing. And I feel like that if we don't make Eggman do something completely evil, because in the actual Metal Virus arc, I don't know how they're going to lower the stakes to make things go back to normal. Eggman literally just tried to kill everyone on a fucking whim. At least in this version, you will know that that will never happen unless someone tries to kill Eggman. So that would make it clear to Sonic and friends that you have to find some other way to stop Eggman that doesn't involve killing him. So hopefully you guys like this little retelling. I know that it was a bit sloppy. I know that it could have been better, but I just felt like that this is something that people needed to hear in case you, like me, weren't satisfied with the actual story itself. If you guys like this video, hit the like button. If you really like it, share it. And if you want to see more, then subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and bye. Before the credits roll, I thought I'd give a shout out to my multiple ways of making money. YouTube is starting to slowly sanitize the platform, making it harder for people to make money on edgier content like I do. So I'm reminding you guys that I have a Patreon. The Patreon has plenty of reward tiers, including seeing my podcast early and possibly getting onto the show if I can fit that into the schedule. I have video recommendation tiers that you can try to get into, and if all else fails and my YouTube falls apart, I always have a BitChute account. So remember to check out all these different things in the description below.